You've probably had this moment more than once. You open your banking app on payday, see the deposit hit, and for a second you feel a little relief. Then you start paying bills, buying groceries, filling the gas tank, maybe grabbing one or two small treats to feel human. And suddenly that paycheck you were counting on feels like it's already gone. You didn't splurge on anything huge, you didn't make any wild purchases, and yet the money seems to evaporate faster than it used to. It's easy to blame yourself and think, I must just be bad with money. But what if the real problem isn't you at all? Right now, millions of people are living through the same experience, and the confusing part is that in many cases wages have technically gone up. You might be earning more than you were a few years ago. The number on the paycheck is bigger. But the problem is that numbers on paper don't automatically translate into what really matters, what that money can actually buy. Economists call this real wages, and that's the heart of why your paycheck doesn't feel like it's stretching far enough anymore. Imagine your job gives you a 3% raise. On the surface that sounds pretty good, but if the cost of the things you buy every month has gone up 4 or 5% in the same time, that raise isn't really a raise. It's a pay cut in disguise. You're bringing home more dollars, but each dollar has less power than it used to. That gap between how fast your income grows and how fast prices grow is where so much of the frustration in everyday life is happening right now. You see it clearly in the basics. Start with housing, because for most people that's the single biggest expense. Whether you rent or own, shelter is eating up a larger share of the typical paycheck than it did for earlier generations. Rents have climbed in many areas, not just in the big, flashy cities you see in the news, but in regular suburban and even rural areas too. Even if your own rent hasn't jumped dramatically this year, the costs built into housing are still drifting upward behind the scenes. Property taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities, none of them are getting cheaper. If you're trying to buy a home, you're not just fighting higher prices, you're also dealing with the reality that wages simply haven't kept pace with what it costs to get a roof over your head. Then there's the ongoing shock at the grocery store. You walk in planning to just grab a few things, and you walk out wondering how a small basket could possibly cost that much. Some of that is straightforward price increases that you can see right on the shelf tag. But another piece is something sneakier. Shrinkflation. That's when companies quietly reduce the size or weight of a product while keeping the price the same, or even raising it slightly. The bag of chips looks the same, but there's more air and fewer chips inside. The cereal box is the same height, but the bottom is pushed up. The pack of toilet paper has fewer sheets per roll. Over time, this means you're spending more money to get less stuff, even if your shopping list hasn't changed at all. Healthcare adds another layer of pressure. Even people who have health insurance through their jobs are often paying higher deductibles, bigger co-pays, and more out-of-pocket costs than they did just a few years ago. Prescription drugs, routine visits, and emergency care have all marched upward in price. If you've ever delayed going to the doctor because you were worried about the bill more than the illness, you've felt this squeeze directly. Healthcare costs tend to grow faster than general inflation, which means they eat an even bigger share of your paycheck over time. On top of that, you're likely feeling the impact of taxes in subtle ways. As your nominal income goes up, you can creep into higher tax brackets, even if your real buying power hasn't improved. Local taxes, fees, and sales taxes sometimes increase to keep up with government budgets, and those changes quietly nibble away at your take-home pay. You might not notice each adjustment on its own, but you definitely notice the end result when you compare how far your paycheck used to go with how far it goes now. Before we go any deeper, if this is already resonating with you and you want more clear, no-nonsense breakdowns of what's happening to your money, take a second to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. It tells the YouTube algorithm that regular people actually care about this stuff, and it helps this kind of information reach more folks who are wondering the exact same thing you are. Where is my money going? Now let's get back to what's really going on with your paycheck. All of this would be bad enough if life stayed perfectly simple, but humans are human. And there's another factor at play called lifestyle creep. It happens when, as you earn a bit more, you slowly raise your standard of living to match. Maybe it starts small, like ordering delivery instead of cooking when you're tired, upgrading your phone a little sooner, or saying yes to subscriptions because it's only $10 a month. None of those decisions feel outrageous in the moment, but when they stack on top of rising prices for essentials, they can turn into a serious drain. That doesn't mean you're reckless or irresponsible. It just means you're a normal person trying to enjoy life a bit while everything else gets more expensive. The key thing to understand is that it's the combination of all these forces working together that makes your paycheck feel so weak. housing takes a bigger bite, groceries are more expensive and quietly shrinking, healthcare and insurance are climbing, taxes and fees chip away at the edges, lifestyle creep fills in the gaps. Even if each one of those on its own seems like not a big deal, they add up to a situation where your income simply can't keep up with the full cost of staying afloat, let alone getting ahead. That's why it feels like you're running on a treadmill that keeps speeding up while you're staying in the same place. Another reason this feels so unfair is that your experience doesn't always match the headline numbers you hear about in the news. You might hear that inflation is cooling or wages are rising and wonder why your own life still feels tight. It's because those averages can hide the reality that the specific things you rely on, rent in your city, food for your family, car insurance in your state, childcare in your neighborhood, might be rising faster than the overall inflation number suggests. When the stuff you must buy is exactly the stuff that's going up the most, your personal inflation rate can be much higher than what the official statistics say. At the same time, the progress you do make is often invisible. You might be paying down debt, building a tiny emergency fund, or simply keeping your head above water in a tough environment, and none of that feels like winning. Social media doesn't help either. Everywhere you look, it seems like other people are doing better, traveling more, living in nicer places, and buying nicer things. You rarely see the credit card bills, the stress, or the trade-offs they're making behind the scenes. Compared to that polished highlight reel, your own paycheck can feel even smaller than it actually is. So where does that leave you? The most important first step is understanding that your frustration isn't just in your head, and it's not just a personal failure. There are real structural forces at work that make it harder for ordinary people to feel secure, even when they're doing everything right on paper. Recognizing that gives you context, and sometimes a bit of relief, because you can stop beating yourself up and start looking at your money with clearer eyes. Once you see the real picture, you can start making adjustments from a place of knowledge instead of guilt. That might mean paying closer attention to shrinkflation and switching brands or sizes to get better value. It might mean negotiating bills, shopping around for insurance, or being more intentional with lifestyle upgrades so they match your priorities instead of just happening by default. It might mean focusing on skills or career moves that increase your income faster than inflation, rather than just accepting whatever tiny raise comes your way each year. None of these are magic fixes, but each one is a small way of pushing back against a system that's constantly nudging you in the other direction. The bottom line is this: your paycheck doesn't feel like enough because in many ways, it genuinely isn't keeping up with the world around you. Prices have moved faster than wages, especially in the areas of life you can't easily cut back on. Companies have found clever ways to charge more without looking like they're charging more. Essential services like healthcare and housing have become heavier burdens. And on top of all that, normal human behavior and social pressure pull you towards spending just a little bit more as time goes on. When you step back and see all of that at once, the mystery disappears. Your paycheck feels too small because the game has quietly changed, and for most people the rules haven't been explained clearly. In the end, understanding those rules is the first real power you have. You might not be able to change inflation or rewrite tax law by yourself, but you can change how you interpret what's happening to you and how you respond to it. Instead of thinking, "I'm terrible with money," you can start saying the system is stacked this way, so here's how I'm going to adapt. That shift in perspective doesn't magically make your paycheck bigger, but it does give you back something even more important: a sense that you're not crazy, you're not alone, and you're not powerless. If you found this breakdown helpful and you want to keep unpacking what's really going on with your money, do two things before you go. First, subscribe to the channel and give us a like so you don't miss the next video, where we'll dig into specific strategies to stretch your paycheck in this kind of environment. Second, check out the video I've linked on screen and in the description that explains why your grocery bill, specifically, has exploded over the last few years. Together, these videos will give you a much clearer picture of where your money is going and what you can actually do about it.